What if it was less about not drinking and more about being the woman you want to be? Wouldn't that feel better? Hi, my name is Holly Prevo, a former heavy drinker who started her own Soberish Uprising and everything in her life up-leveled. On the Soberish Uprising, we tell stories of finding freedom from alcohol on our own terms, making it our best power move to get the life we want. I'm so glad you're here. Let's go. Today, I am delighted to have my dear friend Stacey McFarland join me. Hi, Stacey.
Hello.
So good to have you. You have been such a supporter of the work that I am doing and always showing up and supporting me and really curious. So thank you for taking time out of your busy day to share your story.
Absolutely. I love what you're doing. I absolutely love it. It has changed how I think about alcohol, right? How I view my own intake. So thank you for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So we connected. I have a lot of guests from Powerhouse, which I think shows the type of women that are doing big things in the world are starting to be more intentional with what they put into their body, right? I think that's kind of showing that we're moving in a way of, if I can change the world, I can also change the habits that maybe don't serve me. But we connected probably like 3 years ago at Powerhouse. You are a coach, you work in empowerment, mindset, and you said you're kind of on your sober journey. So I would love to hear, where are you at?
Oh, it's become choice. And you have opened my eyes to that. And I think I had a lot of habits just because it was Friday night. Let's have a cocktail, right? Because it's the weekend. Let's have a couple drinks, right? And I found myself just falling into that, not really thinking about it one way or the other. And it wasn't until I started listening to you and hanging out with you and realizing I wasn't really choosing it consciously. I was really just going through the motions very subconsciously. And I also realized at a Powerhouse that I would choose to have a drink to fit in if other people were, right? Just to be part of what was happening, but not really thinking, do I want this or do I not want this? And this last Powerhouse, I did not have a cocktail until the very last night because I wanted to stay so clear in all of the, gosh, the word just left, sessions. That's the word I was looking for. I wanted to stay just like so clear and not be fogged. And when you take alcohol out of your life, you realize the impact that it has, right? Like nobody ever drinks and feels great the next day. I don't care who you are, like, right? Like puffy face, all the things. There's something about it that's just like, ugh, right? So yeah, I just want to keep saying thank you. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you for always sharing the encouragement and your story, right? The more we're sharing stories on all levels, we know the power that is like somebody's going to see you and say, hey, I resonate with Stacey. And that's why it's so important that we all share our stories. So thank you for coming on and sharing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm curious because I think, we had dinner that last night before we left. I'm curious for you, looking back, do you feel like that drinking during those other Powerhouses did kind of disturb your experience?
I do. I do. And it started with just the thoughts that ran through my head the next morning, right? Because I would look at myself and like I said, my face would be puffier from wine or alcohol in general. And that would start a thought of like, ooh, I don't look that good today, right? Which then also leads to another thought, to another thought. And before I knew it, like I was like really judging myself and not feeling good about myself. Right. So, yeah. And that's not the mindset that I wanted to be in, to receive the gifts of the knowledge of all the things, the experience with the other people. You shut yourself off when you have your own little story going on. You're not really open to connect with other people, right? You just aren't. You're guarded. You maybe hide a little bit. You're like hedging a little bit because you don't feel that great about yourself.
Oh, that is thank you. That is such an insightful share of like, you can't be in two places at one time, right? So if you're in your head about all your insecurities, you're not open to the love or the knowledge other people are sharing. And I always talk about how like insidious it is, right? Like you weren't boozing, you weren't having 2 to 3 bottles. Like it was like 1 or 2. And then that next morning and then the thoughts like compound, right? Like, and before
Right.
you know it, you're just like blaming yourself and all these things. And then you step into a space that you've invested time and resources into, and you're not even fully able to receive it.
100% because I was stuck into my own story. And another thing that
Yeah.
happens like that with me personally is food. Same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Same
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
So they're powerful.
Yeah. When you say food, is that food when you're drinking or just food kind of separate? It's a
Food
separate
when
item.
I'm drinking. So I
Mhm.
try to eat healthy, but I find that when I drink that kind of
Mhm.
blows all of that, right? So then
Yeah.
now I'm starting to eat something that I wouldn't normally
Mhm.
eat. So then the guilt just piles on more.
Mhm. Yeah. 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 And
It's a
it's
little heavier.
yeah, literally and
Absolutely. I didn't even realize I did that, but yes, you're right.
like
You're right.
literally. No, I mean, and for me it was and I think what's so important that I loved that you shared is that it's the next day, right? It's like you're keeping a promise for that next day because it's like that one drink didn't affect you, two drinks, whatever. Like you were fine, you were still present, but it's like the next day is when all the like consequences happen and all the shit that you've been like, it's like is it worth that? Right?
Exactly. Exactly. So that's why I don't think I ever really paid attention to what that felt like the next day. It was
Mm,
kind of like that's just how it is. But now you brought so much awareness around
mhm,
the subject that I'm like, okay, I don't
yeah.
feel like I want to feel based on,
Mhm,
what the story I'm telling myself. Not
mhm,
that I mean, you can't drink alcohol and not feel it. I don't think you're a little sluggish or slower or
mhm,
foggier the next day, but never really hungover. And
yeah.
interesting fun fact about me is that I've never actually ever gotten sick from drinking. Like I've
Really?
never, yeah. And people are always shocked about that. Like I've
Mhm,
never gotten to that point.
mhm,
A little bit of a control freak in my previous life, so I think that
yeah,
was part of it.
yeah,
So, but still just the feeling of
mhm,
you just feel different. You just
yeah,
feel different. You just don't
yeah.
feel like yourself. I totally lost track of what I was saying.
That's
Isn't that a
no.
beautiful thing?
I love this is gonna go where it goes. It's gonna have a life of its
Okay.
own. But I think you were just talking about, like, not being sick and, like, the tiredness of that next day, right? Like, it does affect you, whether it's 1 drink or many drinks.
That's what I was saying. Yeah, so it's not like you have to binge, but even
Mhm.
yeah, just one is going to make a difference, and
Right.
and sometimes it's okay. Sometimes it's like, I wanted to have
Mhm.
the drink, I had the drink, I know what I'm gonna wake up next morning, I
Yeah.
know what's gonna be there, and I won't feel guilty for it,
Yeah.
right?
And
It's a
yeah.
choice, it's the story. It's the
Yeah.
story we tell ourselves and what we're making it mean. We hear that a lot in the work we do, but
Yeah.
right? But what are we making it mean?
Oh, that's so true. So for you, I love that thought of so you're like, so I am intentional. This is a conscious drink. I may not feel as 100% as I would, but that is something that is like I'm okay with. And then you don't have the guilt and the shame with it because it's just the consequence of your choice and you're ready to accept it.
100%,
Yeah.
which I would have had the guilt or not felt good about myself. Let
Mhm.
me say that no matter what,
Mhm.
I would have
Yeah.
just stayed in that story. So you shining a light on this,
Mhm.
you know, it also has helped me say, yes, I want to have the glass of wine. Tomorrow I might show up puffy and I'm just going to look at myself and go, I had the glass of wine. That's why I'm puffy, not because I'm
Yeah.
a terrible person, not because,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yes,
I'm
yes,
not
yes,
going to
yes,
live
yes.
in that ick and that guilt of it.
Mhm.
It's a fact. It's
And
what
that's an
happened.
empowered choice you make. Like it doesn't sometimes our empowered choice like don't lead to the best things, not best things for us, like a puffy face, right? You're like, I'm gonna have that, but I'm at will, I'm at choice, and I'm
Right.
not just having life happen to me.
Right.
Yeah.
So much more conscious than I've ever been
Yeah.
before. So,
It was interesting. So last week I had a little bit of travel and I was like up really, really late and up early. And I've realized how much I'm just like a creature of habit. My sleep schedule is like perfect, right? It's like I go to bed every day by 9 and I'm up at 4:50. Like very, so it's up.
yeah.
And it was so funny. I was feeling just like sluggish and I hadn't worked out. My eating wasn't good. And I was like, why am I carrying so much? Like I felt really like anxious about it.
Mm.
And I was like, "What is that?" And I realized it was because that's how I felt a lot of days when I drank too much. So it was
Oh,
almost like a flashback of like, "Did you drink?" You're like, "No, no, no, you're just tired because you've traveled, you've been up late, you're just out of sync." But it was so interesting that even that guilt and like a little bit of shame came up for me because it was like old habits of like
right.
This is
I
how it used to feel, sluggish, not making the best choices, not wanting to go work out. And I was like, oh, interesting.
right. I love that. And what I was thinking, what you said when you said that, what I was thinking was, do we tell ourselves like, "Oh, no, like, we're going strong down this wrong path," instead of like,
Mm,
it's a moment, it's a couple days,
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you
Right.
know? Like, that's exactly what I felt
Mhm.
like. We know that it can be a slippery slope, right? So
Yeah.
we tell ourselves that story.
Yeah. No, for sure. Yeah. Cause I was like, it's only a couple that you're fine. Even if it's all week, like it's fine. Like you'll
It
get
is.
like, but yeah, the story I told myself was you're behind, you need to get going. And then, it was just interesting to be like, why are you having this reaction? I was like, oh yeah, because it's used to be how I felt when I was making bad decisions and I was breaking promises and I was operating at 60%, so it's
Yes.
just interesting how the stories, to your point.
Mhm.
I love this idea of you had said wanting to be a part of something, right? And I think you shared that maybe one of the first times we connected is like being a part of community and wine's a big piece of that. So like how did you handle this powerhouse and or other occasions to still be a part of something but not partake in drinks?
It was actually the story I was telling myself, right? Like, what I thought
Mm,
about myself, that it this is so good because as a little girl, I was always one that wanted to fit in, to be accepted.
mm, mhm,
Right? And as I've worked on myself, then I realized I needed to fit in with me and accept
mm,
myself. And as I've
mhm,
done that work, you don't look outside of yourself as much anymore. So I felt very comfortable,
mm,
showing up and making the choices that I wanted to make,
mm,
right? And not feeling like I needed to fit in, which was a beautiful, beautiful thing. Like I
mm,
didn't my worth was not contingent on whether I
mm,
fit in with these people or not. I was making the choice of what I wanted to do for myself based
mm.
on me and loving and
Yeah.
honoring myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So I was still able to hang out and have fun and not have the alcohol mean anything.
yeah. Well, and it's interesting too because it's not even fit in. You don't care if you fit in because you fit in with yourself, right? So there's no
Isn't that a
outside.
great feeling?
You're like, I'm awesome. If anybody else is, I don't care. I'm great.
I'm not willing to, like, water down my awesomeness to fit into this group
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah. And we love your awesomeness. That's why we all love you so much because you do
Oh,
show up as yourself.
so good.
How has this been in kind of your day-to-day life as you've maybe transitioned from more like habitual drinking to more conscious drinking? Like, has that impacted relationships, friendships, or have you seen that shift in any way?
That is such a great question because I feel like when I first started making these choices that
Mhm.
I had a fear of, what will I do on the weekend? Will I still be
Mm,
able to connect with the people that I connected
mhm.
with? Would I still be able, honestly, to connect with my husband?
Yeah.
Right? Because our
Mhm.
weekends, we have fun. My husband is so much fun.
Mhm.
Right? But a lot of that would involve, like, going to wineries and going to breweries
Yeah.
and doing things like that, and, we're lucky that our kids like to hang out with us.
Mhm.
So,
Obviously.
they will ask us to go do things, which is the
Mhm.
best, right? Like, we have called ourselves, we are the cool parents, right? Like, we are the
Like
cool parents. I know.
and just pause you. If you knew Stacey, this would not surprise you at all. You're like, "Of course you're the cool parents." Like, why would you not wanna hang out with you? And I'm sure your husband is equally as lovely, so
Right.
that's
So
not surprising.
thank you. I thank you so much for that. But I decide, I realized that I could still go to these places,
Mm.
enjoy the live music,
Yeah.
enjoy hanging out with my family, and decide whether or not I wanted to have a drink. Like, you
Mm.
just because you go to the winery or you go to the brewery
Mhm.
doesn't mean you have to do anything. You're not on a have to path ever.
Yeah.
It's always choice. So there's been times where I've gone and I haven't had a drink.
Mhm. Mhm.
Total choice. There's
Yeah.
been a time, or times when I go and I do, but
Mhm.
it's total choice. But I had to work through that fear of
Yeah.
what does it look like? And
Mhm.
I learned that it only looks like what I want it to look like,
Yeah.
right? Like, it
Yeah.
doesn't have to mean anything, and I didn't
Mhm.
have to explain it.
Mm. Mhm. What does it look like for you? When you say, "I get to define what it looks like," when you think of those experiences with your kids and your family, like, what's important for you in those moments?
That I honor myself and
Mm.
that I really ask myself, like, what do I need right now?
Mhm. Yeah.
What do I want right now?
Yeah.
and honor that whatever it is. And like I said, sometimes it is, I'm going to have a drink. And
Mhm.
sometimes it's no, I don't want to today
Yeah. Yeah.
based on whatever,
Mhm.
you know, that's it.
Yeah. Well, it can be it's very scary at first. Scary because it's like, I mean, anytime we're not doing something like we're used to doing, our body's like, wait, what do you mean we go to the brewery, we don't drink? Like, I don't understand that. Like, right. So it's like you are forming new habits, you are doing new things. And I think what's always fascinating to me is when I go out, we went out to like this pizza joint the other day and I was like, I just had a non-alcoholic beer. And I was looking around, I was like, there's my old story was that like you always have drinks when you go out to eat, right? Like you don't go anywhere, you can't have a glass of wine. Why would you do that? And then you start to look around, you're like, oh, there's dozens of tables here of people not drinking. There's probably dozens of people at a brewery having a non-alcoholic beer or sparkling water or like
Yes.
you stop and you look and you're like, oh, I'm not the only one.
Right.
And even
You
if I
don't
was, that's fine. But
you don't notice it until right?
Mhm,
Until
mhm,
you're the one doing it, I think, and we always get mirrored back like what we are doing. But also, I feel like it's it's very acceptable or it's
mhm,
becoming more acceptable
mhm.
to choose not to drink,
Yeah.
right? Like they're used almost I want to say it's almost empowering to choose whether or not
Mhm.
that you're going to do it or not. And it's great.
Yeah.
It makes me feel powerful when I'm like
Ooh.
yes or
Yeah.
no, right? Like
Yeah.
yeah, honoring myself, I guess, is what comes
Yeah.
to mind when I say that.
Yeah. Well, and before when you were drinking, did it feel like a choice or was it just kind of like a part of your day? Not
It
day,
was
but part of
just
the event.
right. It was what we did.
Mhm.
You know, it there wasn't any thought behind it, to be
Yeah.
honest with you. It
Yeah.
was just, habit. It was like,
Mhm.
it's the weekend, I live very close to Virginia wine country,
Mm.
so we can be at all different types of wineries very easily, and I love that atmosphere, right? It's fun,
Mhm.
it's all
Yeah.
the things, and you can still have all those things without having the wine, or you can have the wine, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's a choice, so, um, yeah.
Mm. Well, and you said with your husband that shift. How did he handle kind of maybe you not drinking as much? Was there any type of conversation you two had to have around it?
Um Not really.
Mm, mhm.
No, I think he he is so easygoing
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
he also does what he wants to do, which is so interesting, not really caring what anybody else is doing. So I
Mhm.
feel like we just kinda have that understanding that,
Mhm.
I'm not having a drink, he's not worried why. He's just like,
Mhm.
"Okay, good for you," right? And then if and he's making his own choices
Yeah.
about it.
That's interesting because I think a lot of people I know that I had that kind of a thing is like the other partner can feel like, it's like we don't like something we don't like about ourselves sometimes, right? So like they can feel threatened. They can be like, how's this going to change? But it's so
Yeah.
fascinating. You guys are both so strong in who you are that he's not making your stuff about him and you're not making his stuff about you.
I say all the time, the angels sang when he was born because
Mhm.
he is just very confident in who he is
Mhm.
and, does what he wants. I
Yeah.
think we all are, like, striving or I was
Mhm.
always striving to be more like that,
Yeah.
right? Like, he doesn't make up a story about it. He's kind of a unicorn.
Yeah.
Like, he really is, which gives me permission to make
Mhm.
decisions,
Mhm.
about myself and not have all this explaining to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So whether you drink or not, he doesn't not care. Your choices about that does not matter to him.
Does not at all. He is not
Interesting.
affected by
Yeah.
it whatsoever, and, I guess if I'm not drinking, then he knows he has a designated driver.
Yeah. There is a
I was
bonus.
just thinking he's probably like, "Great," right?
You don't have to worry about Uber or anything. You're like always the
Right.
DD.
Exactly. I mean, that's exactly what I thought, like,
Yeah.
there's no question who's driving, right? Then it's
Yeah.
gonna be me, so which is
Yeah.
great, right?
Great.
That's
And then you
a
also get
great
to dictate when you're leaving. I'm like, if I'm driving, we're leaving when I want to leave. So
absolutely. I like that. I like that.
new rule, new rule.
Yeah.
When you talk, and how about your kiddos? What was their response to you kind of going to those events and not drinking as much?
This is interesting because I did not drink much around my children when they were growing up.
Okay.
You talked a little bit about, like, alcohol and what it was like when I was a child. It wasn't
Mhm.
something that was day to day in my
Mhm.
childhood. But I do have memories of, interesting because feeling like I'm getting a little emotional, but I
Mhm.
do have memories of my stepfather over drinking.
Mm.
And I do remember feeling uncomfortable, and I remember
Mhm.
feeling fearful, and I can
Mm.
remember moments when things weren't so fun.
Mm.
And it wasn't a daily, but there's 2 moments that really stand out to me,
Mm.
as a child that I remember.
Yeah.
And I don't feel safe when people
Mhm.
overdrink. My first husband, that was something also there too,
Mhm.
that he would overdrink, and then I immediately don't feel safe.
Yeah.
Whatever story I'm connecting there to
Mhm.
that. And now that I'm saying this to you, I'm like, well, maybe that's why I have never, like,
Yeah, gotten to
drank
that
to the
point.
right, like, that's when I'm like, maybe that's what it because there's a
Mhm.
real safety, issue there, like not being
Yeah.
able to help yourself or control yourself or help me or protect
Mm.
me, like if you've been
Mhm.
drinking too much. So my children didn't see me drink. Maybe like a Mike's Hard Lemonade here and
Mhm.
there, but it
Mhm.
wasn't part of my day to day when they were growing up because of my own stuff about it,
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah.
And it was more surprising to them as they got older that I was drinking, I think, like, because
Mm.
my husband and I have 4 boys together, which is a party all by itself, whether you want it to be or not.
Yeah.
And then, they have their families and then we would do things with them and I then I would drink, and I think that was more shocking to them than it
Okay.
was not to see me
Yeah.
drinking. Yeah, I'm just thinking about, we were on our boat one day, and my oldest son called me party mom. He, like,
Mm.
gave me that label party mom, and I'm
Uh-huh.
just like, "That's interesting." Like, I have never ever felt connected to that title before ever,
Yeah.
right? Like, trying to be the good mom, right? The best
Mhm.
mom possible that I could be,
Mhm.
and I guess I didn't think that, alcohol was in that equation, so,
Yeah. So you
yeah.
don't envision yourself as the party mom.
I not at all, like, it affected me.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
affected me to have that
I'm
title just
sure.
from my own beliefs about it.
Yeah.
So I think now that I don't drink, that it's more of a choice that I don't drink as often. It's not that I don't drink, that I
Yeah.
don't drink. I drink by choice.
Mhm.
That is probably much more comfortable for them.
Mhm.
I'm gonna have some conversations with
Mhm.
my
Yeah.
children about this. Yeah.
We can maybe do a live or something and share if they're comfortable sharing or you are. I'd
Mhm.
love to hear kind of what they say because that is so interesting, especially for you not feeling safe as a young girl and then as a young mom not feeling safe. And so like if that makes total sense that you've never been like blackout drunk or gotten sick because you're like that safety
Yeah,
in your system and it's creating safety for your kids.
right.
And so that is so
Yeah,
fascinating.
and I'm still to this day very uncomfortable around someone who's
Mm.
been over drinking and doesn't have, like, all of their senses about
Yeah.
themselves and is
Yeah.
maybe saying things that, they wouldn't say if they were sober,
Mhm.
right? Like, things are I don't know, it's like somebody takes the air out of the room to me,
Mm.
right? It's
Puts
like,
you on edge a little, right? Like you got
oh,
your like radar on what's gonna happen. Are they gonna do like this? Yeah.
instantly feel super uncomfortable and not
Mhm.
safe. I just don't
Yeah.
feel safe. It scares me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that safety piece and like you that been made about it to some of your control as well, right? Like I never
Yeah,
want to lose control, so I don't feel safe or
right.
unsafe, so I don't feel unsafe. Yeah.
Right, like,
Or
I need to be able to protect I don't wanna feel unsafe, yeah. I feel like I need to able to, like, protect myself at any moment.
yeah, yeah.
I gotta dive it you're bringing up some stories for me today,
There
Holly,
we
I'm
go. That's
just
what this
like
is all about. No,
I
it's
know,
fascinating. Yeah. Well, and
yeah,
like, and I mean, you talked about earlier, like alcohol does affect us. Like you can't say it doesn't because that's why we typically drink it, right? Because like, well, it doesn't affect me. I'm like, well, why? Like, ever people typically like a buzz or they like the way it like mellows them out for a hot minute. And so it's like, if you're around somebody who
yeah,
overuses, like they aren't themselves anymore, and that is
right,
scary. Either are they going to get in trouble and I'm going to be a bystander? Are they going to do something to me? If something happens to me, can they support? I actually had Whitney. Um, Orgasm Whitney from 2 years ago.
Yes.
We taped an episode the other day. It'll come out, but she was talking about how like she doesn't feel safe like with anybody that drinks. Like she's like, and I know it's like she's like, man, woman, it just doesn't make me feel like safe, which I thought was
Mm.
interesting,
I
which
can
makes
feel that
sense.
in my body when you say that. Like, I
Yeah.
really can. Like, I just instantly got, like, super tight.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it's unpredictable, right? Somebody like that is unpredictable. And I think even for me, like if I'm the less I drink, the more I like in really crowded spaces, if people are really drunk, like I can't stay that long. Like I'm like, I need to
That
go.
is so, because I am not comfortable in those
Okay.
spaces at
Yeah.
all. That is so
Mhm.
interesting that you
Yeah.
just said that, because I just had a flashback of walking into a concert and a football game 2 different times where
Mm,
people are really close to me,
yeah.
and I'm just like, "No, like, get me out
Yeah.
of here." Like, I don't like this
Yeah.
feeling at all.
And I think like when you get like the more and more you have like longer terms of sobriety and less drinking, like just more like I can tell immediately if somebody's had one too like too you can just you're heightened to people's behaviors and you're just like or typically I'm drinking with them. So like it all seems normal. And I'm like, ew.
I attach to it a little bit too, because it's almost like
Mm,
I don't feel safe, but then I also become, embarrassed for them, right? Like, I'm, like,
mm,
very nervous about what they're gonna say or what they're gonna
yeah.
do. Like,
Yeah.
I can't disconnect from it. It's
Yeah.
interesting that I'm
Yeah.
just like, "Oh gosh, this is not going in a very beautiful direction."
Is it the mama bear in you think that like wants like
It
to
must be,
see you're like,
because
you're about to
my
make a
whole
bad
body is
decision. You're about to
responding
make
to
a bad decision. Don't do it. Don't do it.
I know, my whole body is responding to this, and then also I feel like when people really over drink, I'm like, "What happened? Like, what are you trying to escape?
Mm,
What are you
mhm.
trying to numb?" Right?
Yeah.
Because, you know, I just think if you're doing it to an extreme, there's something not quite right that feels
Mhm.
that good to you,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And which is a story, like, that's really,
Mhm.
people have things happen to them,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? That they want to get away from, which
Mhm.
is really sad,
Yeah.
but it's a reality. So
Right.
I think the more we work on ourselves internally, the more I don't have a need to try to escape
Mhm.
anything.
Yeah, for
You
sure.
wanna stay alert to it because it's
Yeah.
good, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's like, "This is my life."
It's a
Yes,
sign that you're like, "Oh, what's going on here?" Yeah.
yes, like, "This my life is amazing. Why would I not wanna experience it?"
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm. Yeah. Ugh.
So,
And like you said, it's over drinking, there's like overeating, there's shopping, there's overworking, there's like over extra like there's so many like aholics overing that we can do to like run from the pain. I think alcohol is just one that's like socially accepted
it
more so.
really it really
Um
is, isn't it? Like, it
yeah,
is so
it's
wow.
and I think what you should really because a lot of people have been like, "Well, why do you drink so much?" I was like, I don't think I was drinking to hide the pain. I really don't. Like maybe here and there I would use it, but I think it for me it was more of a habit. And then it just kind of like 1 led to 2, and then, oh, the weekends, and it was social. So I don't think it was hiding, but it is one of those triggers of like, well, if I'm not doing that and I'm overworking, okay, well, what's that about? Am I transferring one for the other? Because my mom,
Mhm.
she's like, she's never had a drinking or substance issue of any kind. She's like, but hers was like overworking, over worrying, on stuff that like still sucked the joy out.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's a really good point. Like, what are we why are we doing this, right? Like, what is
Yeah.
really happening,
Yeah.
right?
And it's
Yeah.
interesting you talk about that safety. I had a woman come on and she talked about how her kid was like 2 and she'd quit 3, I don't know. And she didn't think her kid noticed when she drank, right? She was just like, "Oh, he's like little." And she's like, after he quit drinking, he was so much more cuddly with her. He like loved on her. And
Wow.
she's like, "I think he just sensed like mom's off, or maybe it's a smell." And it was so fascinating because she's like, "I'm glad that, like, I'm sober now because he's young and we have the rest of his life." But she's like, "I didn't think he knew because he was a baby and I wasn't, like, blackout yelling, but, like, I was enough that he sensed it wasn't me."
Right. Altered enough that of
Yes.
course, right? Who would know more than your children? Your children
Right.
know, right? Like, that connection.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
thought it was, because we think we can hide it, right? You're like, "I'm just a little buzzed." And you're like, "No, are you?"
That is interesting you said that, because I've always been one who, even when I had a glass or 2 or
Mhm.
1, I didn't want anybody to know it. I didn't wanna show up like
Mm.
that.
Yeah.
"You are cracking me today." Like, I'm like, I have all this, like, isn't that interesting? Because
Yeah.
what story was I telling myself that I didn't want
Anybody
anybody
to
to
see.
know? that I had been drinking or over drinking.
I wonder if it's a safety thing, right? Like, do I look, what's the word? Not victim. Do I look like somebody could take advantage of me?
Yeah,
Am I gonna do something dumb? Or you care if it is like that safety piece, which makes total sense if alcohol
right.
was unsafe for you for so many years.
Yeah, because I can feel that feeling, like, when you
Mhm.
have a nice or when you're a nice buzz is what I was gonna say, right? Because those are the words that always go together. When you've
Yeah.
got you're feeling it, but then maybe somebody new enters the room or enters,
Mm.
wherever, and you or
Mhm.
run into somebody you hadn't, someplace. What's happening in my mind right now is at a winery, had a
Mm.
couple glasses of wine, and then somebody comes in that I knew, and
Yeah.
then I'm like, "Oh, no."
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, the shame, and can I have a
Mm.
conversation with them without them knowing?
Yeah.
I'm at a
Yeah.
winery. It's
Right.
like
Like, that's a place that, like, or that's what they sell. Like, it's the only
right, it's
yeah.
that's so yes, so much awareness today
Yeah.
about
Well,
that.
and
Like,
I thank you for sharing. You've had so many awarenesses, so thank you for sharing on so many different levels of how this has impacted you.
I'm so thankful for it, and I've shared it with my clients.
Mhm.
I recently had a client who made a conscious choice to stop drinking,
Mhm. Amazing.
and yeah, and it's powerful to watch people do
Mm.
that, right?
Mhm.
To make that choice and realize what it was doing,
Yeah.
and she's ready to do big, big things in her
Mm.
business and
Mm.
knew it was one of the things she was kind of sabotaging herself with
Yeah. Yeah.
and has made a conscious choice. And I just recently had a retreat this past weekend, and
Mm.
I did not serve alcohol. It was in a home, it was in an Airbnb,
Mhm.
and I did not even had it on the form, like, "Do you
Mm.
prefer wine or beer?" Like, had it and knew the answers, and I made a conscious choice not to have it,
Mm.
and not in judgment if they did it or not, but I just
Yeah.
thought as me as the facilitator
Mhm.
of this retreat of us,
Mhm.
empowering ourselves and bettering ourselves, there was nowhere that alcohol in my mind fit that. Based
Yes.
on what you've said, right?
Yep.
Like, no matter how you cut it, it's
Mhm.
not good for us,
Right.
right? Now, I wasn't gonna be in judgment if
Yeah.
anybody, went to the store and got a bottle of wine or anything like that, but I didn't think I was the
Mhm.
one who I was facilitating and leading them on a journey of being their best self, and that's
Mhm.
not part of it.
Mm.
Serving them alcohol
Yeah.
is not part of leading someone on the journey of being their best self.
Oh,
So
I'm so proud of you for doing that, especially after even putting it on there and be like, "No, I can't do that."
yeah, and that it was interesting when we were leaving that
Mhm.
I had a guest say about how much fun they had had,
Mhm.
right? And that
Mhm.
there was not even alcohol involved,
Mhm.
right? Because we think that we have to have or we
Mhm.
associate alcohol with a good time, right?
Yeah.
Girlfriends get together and they
Yeah,
hook up, like, it's part of it.
totally.
We had the best time, and
Mhm.
even on the last night, we were, like, laughing to where you're crying and you wanna
Yeah.
stop laughing because your stomach hurts, and I had not laughed like that for a long time, that deep,
Oh,
deep laugh, and I was just like, "You can have a great time without
yes.
it, without it."
Oh. Oh,
Yeah.
and, like, the gift of you removing that so people don't even have to make the decision was probably so because you could who knows it was going it's like, "Oh my god, am I gonna drink?" Like, for you to open up, like, your powerhouse experience, right? Like, to be
Yes.
totally open and to be like, "This is what we do here." Like, because I agree, like, I'll still have a glass of if they could find a good non-alcoholic red wine, I would probably never drink again, but they have not figured that out, and
Yeah.
if they do
No.
but, no matter it's not good for you, right? And you can still make a choice to have it, but,
Right.
like, it's not it doesn't help your heart, it doesn't give you antioxidants, all that crap that we've been sold, but, like, doesn't
Yeah.
help your intuition, like but, it's a choice that we can make, and we all make those differently, but I love,
Mm,
love, love that you're like, "It doesn't fit your empowered version of yourself." It
no.
doesn't.
And I wasn't attached to, like, this is the law, you're not gonna have it, right?
Yeah,
Like, I
yeah,
and which was
mhm,
fun too, like,
yeah.
that felt so good, and that's how I knew I was making a
Mm,
choice that was
mhm,
very aligned because I didn't need to prove it to anyone else, I didn't need to
mhm,
have their opinion, I didn't make a big deal about it,
yeah,
even though I asked them on the form,
mm,
I never said, "Listen, I asked you this question, but we're not gonna have it." I just let it go.
let it go.
I just let it go. I just let us just roll out very naturally about it, and it was beautiful to watch.
Well, congratulations on your retreat. I bet that was
You.
amazing. And
It
with
was,
belly
and
laugh.
we need to have a whole side conversation about that.
Yes,
But,
we will.
yeah, it was good. It was
Oh,
fun.
I'm so glad. Well, I want to be mindful of time. I could talk to you for days on days, but two final questions before we wrap up. And I will put how to get a hold of you and the work you do through Soul Studio. I know you do retreats, coaching, group programs. You're a phenomenal coach. So we'll make
Thank
sure
you.
people can get
Thank
a hold
you.
of you there.
Okay.
But I would love to know, what if somebody's listening and they are kind of like in this place of habits and wanting to make conscious choices, maybe what's one word of advice or something that worked for you that you would want to share with somebody?
Mine was to trust myself,
Mhm.
to go slow, and really ask myself, "Do I want this?
Mhm.
Do I want this?" Instead of just
Mhm.
doing it out of habit. And one question I ask myself on a daily is this a representation or a choice of old me or future me? I ask myself that a lot, right?
Mhm.
So, where are you on your journey? How do you wanna show up? What are your goals? What are your dreams? All
Mhm.
of the things. And
Mhm.
I think that goes with everything you're doing in
Mhm.
your
Absolutely.
everything.
Mm. Old me or future me? Like, who's making this decision here?
Right. That's powerful, isn't it? Like,
Oh my, that, like, gives me the chills because it's so true. It's like, who's doing this? Like, and
yes.
then you own that decision, right?
Yes.
Whatever that
Yes.
looks like.
Yes.
Awesome. And last but certainly not least, what does soberish mean to you?
Soberish means choice.
Mhm.
One word,
Yeah,
choice,
yeah.
right? Like, you can
Mhm.
choose to be sober or you can choose to have the drink.
Yeah.
Ish. The
Ish.
ish to
Yeah.
me is the drink, right? Like,
Yeah.
and it's okay.
Mhm.
It feels so light. I love the title because it doesn't
Mhm.
feel tight, it doesn't feel restricted, it doesn't feel forced. It feels
Mhm.
freedom, choice, alignment,
Mhm.
love, honor, makes me emotional.
Mhm. Thank you. And trust.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm. Thank you so much for sharing. I know you're brilliant. You have such a great insight, and I know this will help people out there who are
yeah,
stepping into trusting themselves and making those choices from the new them or future them.
yeah. Thank you for being
Mhm.
brave enough to share your experience, right? To share
Mhm.
your stories because you're a trailblazer, Holly.
Mhm.
You are paving the way for people to say, "Yes, it is okay to make a
Mm.
choice." So thank you for
Mm.
being you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I received that. Thank you so much for spending time with us. If you loved this episode, which we hope you did, please leave us a review or share with a friend. And if you're ready to explore your own version of Soberish, head over to soberishuprising.com. And remember, everything you want is on the other side of saying no to that drink.